I'll just start with Marsia, and then I'll keep an eye out for it.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. For the love of Imam Ridha, another salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Al-Madad Mawla Raza, Al-Madad Mawla Raza, Mawla Raza, Mawla Raza. Al-Madad Mawla Raza, Al-Madad Mawla Raza, Al-Madad Mawla Raza, Al-Madad Mawla Raza. All together. Al-Madad Mawla Raza, Al-Madad. Nana Nabi Dada Ali, Dadi Teri Khairun Nisa. Al-Madad Mawla Raza, Al-Madad Mawla Raza, Al-Madad. Tu hai Masiha e jahan, Shah e Khuda, Sah-e laqab. یوں ہر فرشتہ روز پر آتا ہے تیرے بادب. حارت نہیں ہوتی تیرے روزے پہ کوئی بھی دعا. نانا نبی دادا علی دادی تیری خیر النساء. المدد مولا رضا, المدد مولا رضا, المدد. بینائی بھی دیتا ہے تو, گویائی بھی دیتا ہے تو. مانگے اگر تجھ سے کوئی, دانائی بھی دیتا ہے تو. تو بھی تو باب علم ہے, تو بھی تو ہے مشکل کشا. نانا نبی دادا علی دادی تیری خیر النساء. المدد مولا رضا, المدد مولا رضا, المدد, المدد. ہے ضامن آہو بھی تو, گل بھی ہے تو, خوشبو بھی تو ہے. پہنچتا ہر آنکھ سے گرتے ہوئے آنسو بھی تو تیری عطائے دیکھ کر دشمن کو بھی کہنا پڑا نانا نبی دادا علی دادی تیری خیر النساء المدد مولا رضا المدد مولا رضا المدد تیری کرامات نظر شب ہو کہ ہو وقت سحر کہتا ہے ہر زائر تیرا روزے کی جالی جھوم کر مشہد مقدس ہو گیا تو نے جو کر دی اذان نانا نبی دادا علی دادی تیری خیر النساء المدد مولا رضا المدد مولا رضا المدد تیرے ہی دسترخوان پر ہوتا ہے جنت کا غما جنوں ملک لیتے ہیں سب تیرے ہی در سے روٹیاں مولا تیرا مقروض ہے ہر ایک گدا و بادشاہ نانا نبی دادا علی دادی تیری النساء المدد مولا رضا المدد مولا رضا المدد آل ازا کے حال پر دکھتا تو ہوگا دل تیرا عشق غم شبیر میں مارے گئے جو بے خطا ہے مونسو یاور تو بھی ابن شہید کربلا نانا نبی دادا علی دادی تیری خیر النساء المدد مولا رضا المدد مولا رضا المدد المدد مولا رضا المدد مولا رضا صلی علی محمد و آل محمد مؤمنين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام.
Our condolences to the Imam of our time and to all the mu'mineen on the occasion of the Shahadat of our eighth beloved holy Imam, Imam Ali Ibn Musa al-Ridha alayhi salam.
اللهم صل على
Can I please request the recitation of Surah Al-Fatiha for the marhumeen of those who have provided the Tabarruk for this evening's program, and for the marhumeen whose names are displayed on the screen, Surah Al-Mubarakat Al-Fatiha. We are honoured to be hosting Shaykh Muhammad Al-Hilli for the Majlis this evening. Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh. On behalf of the executive, we thank you once again for accepting our humble invitation to honour us with a Majlis for this evening's programme. Can I please ask the Mu'mineen to join me in welcoming Shaykh Muhammad Al-Hilli with the recitation of 3 loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف خلقه وخاتم أنبيائه وسيد رسله سيدنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المطهرين المكرمين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. قال الله العظيم في كتابه الكريم وهو أحسن القائلين وأصدق الصادقين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ليلة القدر خير من 1000 شهر آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the purification of the souls, the enlightenment of the hearts, the acceptance of the deeds, and for the hastening of the reappearance of the awaited Sayyidi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, enlighten your souls, the atmosphere with the recitation of salawat upon Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Respected scholars, elders, sisters and brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Al-Imam al-Dhamin, also referred to as Imam Zamin, is one of the titles given to the 8th holy Imam, Imam Ali Ibn Musa al-Ridha, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. In the recognition today that you and I know that the Ahl al-Bayt alayhi salams, the Imams, are known by a number of titles. Many of us have come to know one major title for each and every Imam. We know the 7th Imam as Al-Kadhim. We know for example, the 6th Imam as As-Sadiq. Some of us refer to the 10th Imam as Al-Hadi, others as Al-Naqi. The 11th Imam is known as Al-Askari. The Ahl al-Bayt, when it comes to their epithets and their titles, these were given to them primarily by the Holy Prophet of Islam or by the Ahl al-Bayt themselves. Others were descriptions of their qualities, their characteristics that they came to know or people came to know or associate with them. That's why when it comes to these titles, they're just not names that you and I recall. They're much more than that for you and I. The 8th holy Imam is known by a number of titles and epithets. He's known as, for example, As-Sabir, the patient ones. How much hardship did the Imam alayhi salam have to deal with when it came to the persecution of the Shia by, for example, the Abbasids such as Harun, and the usurping of their rights. The fact that the Imam would say that sometimes his household will only have one outer garment by which they would use to perform their prayers, the women. And that was the extent of the injustice and the oppression in Medina when his holy father was in the dungeons in Baghdad. Similarly, we are told he's known as Az-Zaki, the pure one, due to the demonstrations of the excellence when it comes to purity and his connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but also purity of his wealth. Because narrations tell us that, for example, once he saw a poor man who came to him on the day of Arafah. He said to him, Ya ibn Rasulillah, give me something. Imam gives him his entire wealth. This individual next to him looks at him. He says to him, Ya ibn Rasulillah, today you've become the poorest person. You have nothing. Imam looks at him and says, today I have become the richest person. An individual who gives for the sake of Allah cannot be compared and is considered the richest. We find that once a poor person came to Imam alayhi salam, the 8th holy Imam, and said to him, Ya ibn Rasulillah, give me on the degree of your muruwa. Muruwa means what? Chivalry. Whatever your level of chivalry is, give me. Do you know what the answer of the Imam was? Imam says, no, I can't. I can't give you according to that level. You cannot, in any shape or form, define the chivalry of the Ahl al-Bayt. That man said, very well, give me according to my chivalry, how much I am. He says, no problem. He gave him 200 dinars. Yes. The recognition is he was known as Al-Abid, an individual who was a demonstration, a manifestation of the excellence of obedience and worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, demonstrated in the form of, for example, humility when it came to these public bathrooms or hammams, so they call them. The famous story in which the Imam alayhi salam was there was a soldier within the army of Al-Ma'mun in Khurasan who saw the Imam, didn't recognize him, said to him, you come and pour water for me. And the Imam came and began to pour water for this particular individual. When others entered, they looked at the Imam doing this. They said to him, Ya ibn Rasulillah, how is it possible that you, such a status, are serving such an individual? That man immediately recognized that the person serving him was the grandson of the Holy Prophet. He fell onto the feet of the Imam and said to him, Ya ibn Rasulillah, forgive me. You should have told me who you are. Imam said to him, why should I tell you that which deprives me from the thawab from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? In the recognition, he was known as Al-Abid. One of the titles of the Imam is Al-Imam Al-Dhamin. In many communities or cultures, particularly in Iran and the Indian subcontinent, this is very well known. I remember when I first began to lecture in communities such as Khwaja community, Pakistani Indian communities, I came to know the term Imam Dhamin. And it wasn't something that was immediately clear for me, yes? Because what the belief is, for example, in such communities, and that is that when you travel, for example, you take some coins. Some communities, what they do is they tie it to their right arm, and they make sure that this is given as sadaqah when they reach their destination. This is for the purposes of protection when it comes to travel. Many a times you hear the term Imam Zamin. I'm giving you something, Imam Zamin. Remember, Allah bless the Mu'mineen and Mu'minat at the European Hajj mission that I was honored to take part for many, many years. Every year when we go for Hajj, they would send us the package, which involves all that we need in Hajj. There, for example, some of the books, some of the dua, for example, the backpacks, other things, the belt. And I always used to find an envelope which said on it, Imam Zamin. It always had 50p in it. Yes? It always, I remember, it always had, what, 50p in it, which was what? It says, this is Imam Zamin. You ask people, what does this mean? How does this refer to the 8th holy Imam? The recognition today that we have a number of practices in our communities that some people have the habit to continuously want to attack and question. Meaning what? They'll come to you and I and say, hold on, there's no basis for this within the religion of Islam, so don't do it. You know, there is an inner disease in some people, and that is question everything and put doubt in everything. And that is a problem in the recognition that what's wrong with this idea that you and I, for example, have this money and then we give it sadaqah, whether you carry it and you put it in your arm or you carry it in your pocket. There's nothing wrong with it as such. No one is necessarily saying that that is somehow part from the ahadith literature from the Quran. So it's something that some people have grown to associate. Yet, the connection with the 8th Imam is of paramount importance. Because people say, one of the titles of the 8th Imam is Al-Imam al-Dhamin, known as Imam Zamin. How is this connection? From my research, I found 2 narrations that people utilize in order to link this element with the 8th Holy Imam, Ali Ibn Musa al-Ridha, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. One incident is less famous than the second incident. But this first incident is found in our narrations, the second isn't. Let's have a look at that. The first one is when Al-Ma'mun al-Abbasi once summoned an individual who was accused of being a thief. That person had stolen something. He came and said to him, "It is my command that your hand will be chopped off." This man looked at him and said, "There is no way you can do that." He said, "Why?" He said, "For 3 reasons." He said, "What do you mean?" He said, "There are 3 reasons why I stole." He said, "Why?" Number 1, he said, "You are the king and you have not provided for us. I am in the state of poverty. It's your fault that I stole." Number 2, I am a Sayyid. I'm a descendant from the family of the Holy Prophet. And you have deprived us from our rights, our khums. Number 3, you are a slave. I am your master. How can a slave punish his master? Ma'mun was enraged with anger. How dare you call me a slave and I am the head of the Muslims? Immediately, who was there? Right next to him was the Holy 8th Imam. Imam Ali would then say, what he is saying is true. I will guarantee his safety. He was the guarantor. Dhamin means the guarantor. Ma'mun said, "How can you? Tell me, how is that possible?" Yes. Imam said, "He is saying that you're a slave." Why? Because your father Harun used the treasury money to purchase a slave woman, and you were born from that particular relationship. Therefore, you are still considered what? Belonging to the treasury, Malul Muslimin, and that belongs to him and everyone else. So he has a point. He has a point. Ma'mun looked at him and says, "Very well, you're free." People then began to name Imam Al-Ridha alayhi salam as Al-Dhamin, the one who guarantees safety. That's the first story. The second, which is much more popular, and today, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you all tawfiq to perform the ziyarah of the shrine of the Imam in Mashhad al-Muqaddas. When you are in Mashhad, you'll see images of what? Of the gazelle. Yes, this deer that looks like, the animal looks like a deer, with the Imam alayhi salam in many places. I think it might be even in some notes, some people say. It was printed in notes. This is a very famous story that you tell people from Iran, yes, and they'll tell you, this is an amazing story. This is the story that we believe in. You've heard of this story? This story is what? This story is on the idea that the Imam alayhi salam was traveling towards Merv Khurasan on his way when he was summoned by Al-Ma'mun al-Abbasi. When he was summoned, yes, in an area that today it's called what? It's called Anahu. Something like this. It's called Anahu, yes. And the Imam alayhi salam saw a gazelle being chased by a hunter. The gazelle came and hid behind the Imam. And then what? And then the hunter came forward. Imam was able to speak to this animal. The animal spoke to the Imam and said, "I am running to feed my fawns," the young gazelles, the deers, "and if you let me, I will come back." Imam looked at the hunter and said, "Very well, leave. Do not hunt this particular animal, for she will come back." The hunter said, "How is this possible? How can you trust an animal? How do I know that you're right?" Yes, there are different versions of this story. Some say Imam said, "I guarantee and you can hold me until it came back." Others say no, the hunter said, "Very well." They let this particular animal go. It fed its fawns and it came back. The hunter was very much astonished and said, well, because of this, I will not chase it, and it became free. Therefore, people now began to say that the Imam alayhi salam was the guarantor of protection, guarantor of safety. He guaranteed the safety of this animal. Incidentally, there are narrations found in Sunni and Shia literature that talk about very similar incidents at the time of Holy Prophet, Rasul al-A'zam Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. In which we are told that the Prophet of Islam would also see distressed animals who would say that we're being hunted, and the Prophet would speak to them. There is no doubt when it comes to the Aqidah of the school of Ahlul Bayt that the Imam Ali Ibn Musa had the ability to communicate with the animals. That there is no doubt. Yes. You ask me how. I tell you, Sulaiman, isn't this demonstrated in the Quran? In the recognition that he spoke to the whoopee word, the hudhud, he spoke to the ants, isn't it? The Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, they would say, Ullimna mantiq al-tayr, Ullimna mantiq al-haywana. We know the language of the animals. We can communicate with them. Number one. Number two, they were able to communicate with others using their own language. One of them was Imam Al-Ridha alayhi salam. He would have debates and discussions with people with other backgrounds and other languages, and he was discussed using their own, for example, language, and sometimes their own dialects too. That there is no problem. Similarly, we have a similar incident at the time of the Holy Fourth Imam, Zayn al-Abidin, As-Sajjad, salawatullahi wa sallam. In the recognition that the Imam alayhi salam would also speak to a gazelle and would save it. Despite the fact that this particular narration with Imam al-Ridha has no basis in terms of literature. We cannot find it in our books of hadith. It is widely accepted amongst the masses to be something that did actually occur. And therefore, the idea that emerges is we have similar narrations that highlight something related to this. For example, Alam al-Majlisi narrates that there was an individual who was the son of the Sultan of Sanja, and he was severely sick. When he was severely sick, one day he went out and he saw a gazelle, a beautiful gazelle, and began to run after it. This animal went where? Into the grave of the Imam alayhi salam in that area, Mashhad. And when he went inside, he saw the grave, he sat next to the grave, and he saw Tabarruk from the grave. As a result of this, he became cured. And the Sultan then built a monument, built this particular shrine of the Imam alayhi salam in honor of what happened to his son. Therefore, the idea that emerges is that there are these stories that are related to this particular title. However, please focus on this particular very delicate point. And that is that there is a stronger evidence within our literature and a better meaning of Imam al-Damin that you and I need to understand, because it is founded on reliable, authentic hadith of the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam. This is key for us to reflect. Yes, the discussion is going to be mainly associated with analyzing some of the hadith. So the discussion needs your attention. And the discussion is theological. Why? Because the hadith that we have, one of many, that is found, for example, in the book al-Ridha, others in Al-Kafi, and other books. This one from the Holy Ninth Imam, Imam Muhammad Mohamedabbas, salawatullahi wa salam. The hadith says, وَمِنْتُ لِمَنْ زَارَ قَبْرَ أَبِي بِطُوس عَارِفًا بِحَقِّهِ الْجَنَّةِ عَلَى اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. The Ninth Imam says, I guarantee anybody who visits the grave of my father in Qus, who understands and has ma'rifah of his status, Jannah. There is a guarantee of paradise given to him or her by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What emerges when we look at some of the hadith which I will quote to you is that Imam al-Dhamin is in reference to the individual who is the guarantor or the guarantor person who guarantees Jannah, guarantees paradise. That is a much more deeper, much more profound recognition when it comes to the discussion of this title of the holy 8th Imam. Why is this area important? Because today there are many men who have come forward and looked at this hadith literature and said, wait, you say that I go for Ziyara in Mashhad and I'm guaranteed Jannah? That doesn't sit well in my aql. I don't seem to accept it very well. A Ziyara that I go, millions go every single year. That means Jannah is guaranteed for them. He's the guarantor of paradise. How am I able to explain this? I want to look at this particular area in detail because we have many narrations similar when it comes to the visitation of the shrine of Sayyid al-Shuhada, Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. And today, alhamdulillah, and I say alhamdulillah, we have many mushakkikeen. Mushakkikeen means those who constantly want to doubt, wants to constantly take you back and make you think twice about certain matters. Sometimes this is beneficial so that you and I are able to unravel and indeed discuss certain subjects in detail so that our conviction becomes stronger. There is no doubt also when it does, it highlights to us the need to look at these subjects specifically within Aqidah. Please understand this. In my recent trip to the United States during Muharram, and alhamdulillah, some of the mu'mineen I see here were also blessed to take part in the Ziyara of Arba'een. May Allah give you all tawfiq to perform the Ziyara of Arba'een next year, inshallah. There were a number of discussions with our youth regarding the role of the mimbar and the topics that are discussed. When I look at some of the youngsters and the youth, and I analyze what's happening on social media, particularly on Instagram, what do I see? And what did I hear? The responses from many of the youth, when I say to them, what are the subjects that you'd like to hear, for example? Do you know what the response is normally? 2 subjects. Social issues and spirituality. I want you, as a speaker or as an alim, to discuss matters that affects me in my life. Yes? These are critical. I want to discuss matters related to problems that I face in my marriage, problems as a parent, problems to do with society. Those problems, make the member discuss these. Very nice. No doubt. Needed. I want to get close to Allah. Teach me ways, practical ways. I don't have much time. Tell me quickly how to get to Allah. That's what I need. Other than that, don't worry. I remember in America, once during the Muharram Majlis, I was invited to a particular center. So I won't mention a name just in case they watch it all. I was invited there, and what I do when I'm invited for Muharram certainly is I study in detail the previous years of Majlis. And I look at an area that's not being discussed, especially also throughout the year, if the titles are there. I came to the conclusion that that particular center had not discussed eschatology, akhirah, hereafter in detail at all. But I noticed a trend. Many lectures were on social matters, music, LGBTQ++, and so on and so forth. So I decided that the series in Muharram will be about death, barzakh, and hereafter. When I began giving this majalis, after 5 nights, the alim, resident alim of the big center in America, called me and said in his office, he said, brother, Shaykh, you need to discuss more about music and LGBTQ. I said, but Mulana, you've discussed this so many times in the past, but this is what the people want. This is what they're craving. This is what they want to hear from the member. I tell you, I remember when it comes to this issue, yes, today, when we look at the demands that many people have in this particular regard, what are the demands that people have? What are the things that they feel that they need to become better in their lives? These things, yes. What have we forgotten? Aqaid, doctrines, beliefs, usul al-din. Sometimes we need to go back to basics, yes. And perhaps in this day and age, with the growing rise of atheist movements, agnostics, others, people, when it comes to their aqaid and their beliefs, are they able to be well-rounded and strong in understanding their beliefs or not? Some of the youth will say to me, you know what? I'm okay with those things. I say to them, why? They say if there is a question, for example, which I had a month ago in America, after a majlis, a brother came to me and said, Wallahi, my daughter is on the verge of leaving Islam. I said, why? She said, because of Pakistan floods. She said, where is God? Why is God causing all this? Yes, Pakistan floods. Why is this happening? Why is this not being somehow? Why is this something that God is allowing for it to happen? Is this something normal? Yes. If you don't give me an answer, she will leave religion. Yes. There are many out there who are what? Who are considering this based on their lack of understanding of some of the key concepts within aqaid, yes, within our teachings, within the belief system that we have, isn't it? I tell you, this is a clear message. You may disagree, but wallahi, you will not be able to attain proximity to God without aqaid. You will not be able to solve your social issues without the basics and the doctrines. Yes. You will not be able to progress in life without having the necessity and the essential knowledge that you and I need to have. Yes. The member of Rasulullah, the member of Hussein, the member of Ahl al-Bayt must tackle theological subjects, even though they're dry. But Maulana, oh, you're going to tell me about proof of existence of God. You're going to go through nubuwwat. You're going to explain this and that. Give me some nice subjects, some juicy subjects. Ajib. I'm not a person who's serving you in a restaurant. We have to understand our priorities. We are falling into this trap. Look at Instagram. What is popular? Yes, what is popular there? Give me nuggets. Give me something that gets me. Yes, it's all excellent. Let's have those. Let's have those. I'm not against those. But we need to also look at what is essential. What's missing in the lives of some of our youth. Yes. If I sit them down and ask them these challenging questions that are being presented at university and in other places, are they able to answer? No. Oh, but Maulana, I know where to go. Where do you go? 3 choices I have. What do you have? Ask them alim, 50-50, or the audience. That's your answer to everything. Therefore, the recognition is if today someone comes and says all these ahadith in your literature that says Jannah is guaranteed if you go for the ziyarah or you go for the 8th Imam ziyarah, how do you explain? How is this possible? I don't get it. How can Jannah be guaranteed for an individual like this? Listen to some of these ahadith so that you know how many of these we actually have. A hadith from the Holy Prophet, Rasul al-A'zam, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. This is found in Kamil Ziyarat. He says, according to this narration, Man zarani aw zara ahadan min dhurriyyati. Anyone who visits me or visits one of my family members, زرته يوم القيامة. I will visit them on the day of judgment. فأنقذته من أهوالها. I will save them from all of the hardships of the day of Qiyamah. A narration from whom? A narration from the Holy Ninth Imam. Peace and blessings be upon him. This is found in Al-Kafi, volume 4, page 585. He says, Man zar qabra abi bitus. Whomsoever visits the grave of my father in Tus. غفر الله له ما تقدم من ذنبه وما تأخر. Allah forgives all the past sins and the future sins. A narration from the Holy 8th Imam himself. Yes, this is found in Uyun Akhbar al-Ridha, volume 2, page 246 or 64. He says, لا تنقضي الأيام والليالي حتى تصير طوس مختلف شيعة. He says, soon in Tus, people will gather. My Shia will gather. وزواري ألا. He says, surely, فَمَنْ زَارَنِي فِي غُرْبَةٍ بِطُوس. Anyone who comes to visit me, and I am alone in this area of Tus, كَانَ مَعِي. Listen to this, Allahu Akbar. He says, كَانَ مَعِي فِي دَرَجَةِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ مَغْفُورًا لَهُ. They will be with me at my station, at my level, on the day of Qiyamah, with all their sins forgiven. Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. He comes forward and adds even more narrations, yes, in this particular regard, and highlights that whomsoever visits the shrine of the Imams, they have visited Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. كَمَنْ زَارَ اللَّهِ. Then we have what? the holy 8th Imam, in another narration, he says, "Man zarani ala bu'di dari wa mazari." Whomsoever comes to my visitation, that's my ziyarah, because my shrine is far. Yes. Ataytuhu yawm al-qiyamah. I will come personally to them on the day of Qiyamah. في ثلاثة مواطن, in 3 places. حتى أخلصه من أهوالها, so that I save them from its hardship. إذا تطايرت الكتاب يمينا وشمالا, when the books are being given to people, either to hold on their right or to their left, I will come to them. وعند الصراط, when they pass the bridge. وعند الميزان, when their weighing of the actions is taking place. Yes. We have these narrations and much more, which present to us a very interesting situation. Yes. And that is the ziyarah of Imam Al-Ridha is so highly encouraged that it equals Jannah and paradise. And he is the guarantor of paradise. Al-Dhamin lil-Jannah, according to the riwayat that we have just listened. How do we understand this? Please focus so that we can go through a theological discussion in this regard and point to evidence that exists in other practices, so that we can see for ourselves where these narrations are pointing towards. When an individual tells you, if you come home, please come home, because there is tea. Yes? There are 2 situations that faces you when you go home. One situation is you go home and the tea is ready and it's poured for you. All you have to do is drink it. It's already there. Or the second situation is you go home and you look at them and says, "Where is the tea?" They'll tell you, "I said there is tea, but I didn't tell you it's already made. You go and make it." So you go, you brew the tea, yes, you get it ready, and then you drink it, isn't it? So the ulama here, they say that when it comes to certain actions, sometimes there is what is referred to in our literature as what? As something which is tam and something which is iqtida'i. What does this mean in Arabic? Something tam means it's complete, it's ready. Iqtida'i means it's based on conditions and the removal of obstacles. So, in terms of the tea example, tam means, yes, you go to that person's house, tea is fully ready for you, it's made, it's poured, you're ready to drink it. Iqtida'i means, no, there are things that you have to do to get it ready. And there are certain impediments that must not exist for you to have the tea. For example, you want to warm the water and there's no electricity. That's an impediment, yes. That's something stopping you from getting the tea becoming ready. Another one is actually what? Is that, for example, not enough tea exists, for example. Or there is a vehicle by which you can prepare the tea. These are all shurut. And what? The raf' of mawani'. Raf' of mawani' means you have to remove the obstacles, the impediments. Here, the scholars come forward and say, these particular narrations, what do they say? They say when an individual goes towards the ziyarah of the shrine of Imam Ridha alayhi salam, they are potentially what? In Jannah. But they must fulfill certain conditions and they must remove certain obstacles. Very important for us to understand, because it's very easy. Someone comes on YouTube and begins to attack these riwayat. What doesn't make sense to me? It's just ziyarah Jannah. What is this? But we have to take a step back and be able to explain, yes, what are these conditions that must be fulfilled for you and I when we go for ziyarah, and what are the things that needs to be removed so that we can be of those who attain paradise as promised by the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam. The first condition is Iman. This is in reference to the wilayah of Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam. The Holy Prophet Rasul al-A'zam Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. In a famous narration, listen to this. The Prophet himself is the individual who is saying that ziyarah to the shrine of Imam al-Ridha gets you Jannah. Listen to this hadith. سَتُدْفَنُ بِضْعَةٌ مِنِّي خُرَاسَانَ. Part of me will be buried in Khurasan. مَا زَارَهَا مُؤْمِنٌ. A believer, whomsoever is a believer and visits that particular place, إِلَّا أَوْجَبَ اللَّهُ لَهُ الْجَنَّةِ. Except that Allah makes Jannah wajib for them. Notice the hadith says what? ما زارها إلا مؤمن. Yes? The believer here is designated as one of the shurut, one of the conditions. Here it's in reference to what? In reference to the wilayah of Ahlul Bayt. That must exist as a prerequisite for this to take place, because normally Iman and Hadith literature is in reference to the following of the Ahlul Bayt. Secondly, the Hadith of the Holy Ninth Imam, what does it say? عارفا بحقه. They must have cognizance of their status. Now, someone says to me, oh, but this we hear so many times. I must have a ma'rifah of the station and the status of the Imams alayhi salam. But give me practical. How do I apply this so that I can be of the people of Jannah, inshaAllah ta'ala, when performing the Ziyarat of the shrine of the 8th Holy Imam? Thankfully, our 6th Imam, Jaffer ibn Mohamedabbas, salawatullahi wa salam, was asked this question, alhamdulillah. Somebody asked him, Yabna Rasulillah, Ju'iltu fidak, may I be sacrificed for you? Ma irfanu haqqi. What is this? To know his status. For me to have that cognizance when I go ziyarah, right? Two types of people go for ziyarah. Some who just jump on the plane, excited, they go, several Instagram posts and they're back. But some go no, with a lot of thinking and potential, yes, for positive change, but also and trying to figure out what this actually means. Imam answers. He says, يَعْلَمُ أَنَّهُ إِمَامٌ مُفْتَرَضُ الطَّاعَةِ غَرِيبٌ شَهِيدٌ. Imam alayhi salam answers. He says, you know, ma'rifah of what this particular Imam, irfan of his haqq, is defined as follows. He says, number one, he recognizes and is cognizant that they are an Imam. مُفْتَرَضُ الطَّاعَةِ. مُفْتَرَضُ الطَّاعَةِ means that you must be obedient to them. Allah has made it obligatory for you to be obedient to them. غَرِيبٌ شَهِيدٌ. That he was all alone and he was indeed martyred. I say, yes, I have this knowledge. I believe that he's an Imam chosen by Allah and that I must be obedient to him. Therefore, do I have this ma'rifah, haqqul ma'rifah? Yes. Can I be included in that definition of the people who have the conditions in order to be of the individuals of Jannah? How do we understand this? Here is an example that's given. If somebody enters the room and they see a lion, there are two ways to look at this. There is an individual looks at the lion and says, that is a lion. Definitely. I agree. And there is another person who comes in and says, that's a lion, and runs for it. To save themselves. Because they know they're in danger. In that room, there is a likelihood of the lion attacking them. There are some of us who are of the first category. Yes, I believe that's the Imam. But they don't put words into action. What does that mean? That means in their lives, are they obedient to the Imam or not? Are they individuals who follow what the Imam has said we should do or not? You might say, but you know, we are sinners. We sometimes follow and sometimes don't. Is there hope for us? Can we somehow become of those individuals who have the ma'rifah through the ita'ah? Without a shadow of a doubt, yes. You and I are able to struggle, to work as hard as we possibly can. But there are things that we need to remove which are obstacles to make us attain that status. Please understand these obstacles. So inshallah, the next time you go for ziyarah, especially to the holy 8th Imam, as well as to Sayyid al-Shuhada, and all the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, to keep these in mind. These are clearly mentioned through hadith and commentary of our ulama. The first obstacle is, during ziyarah itself, to, God forbid, practice disobedience of God. Sins during ziyarah. What do you mean? Somebody who is performing ziyarah, but during the food time is backbiting someone else. Some ladies who are in ziyarah, who are not in the shrine, but their hijab is all over the place. Yes? Somebody, for example, when it comes to outside the ziyarah or in the shrine itself, yes, having what? Having bad intentions of other human beings who are there, for example. And so on and so forth. These these impediments exist during ziyarah. That's the first that has to be removed. So when we go for ziyarat, we have to be extra careful because these must not exist, so that we lift those restrictions on the ma'rifah of the Imam alayhi salam. Because what? They are truly impediments. Number two is disobedience of the Imam and ultimately Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when we return back from ziyarah. No doubt this is even more difficult, isn't it? Because in ziyarah sometimes we are in a spiritual atmosphere, yes? And so it becomes easier to pray your fajr, for example, and not look at haram or listen to music that's haram. Whereas when we come back, this becomes a challenge. This becomes even what? More and more difficult. And that's why the more we are able to uphold this particular practice of ensuring that these impediments are not placed before us in our path to Jannah, the more we are able to fulfill what the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam have promised us regarding the reward for paradise. Question. Here, let's look at one or two misconceptions that exist in this particular regard. Some people say this is exaggeration. Jannah because of ziyarah. How is this possible? You just go for ziyarah, millions go for ziyarah. How can you say that just by going for ziyarah? Very well, you've described that there needs to be some conditions, there needs to be the removal of some obstacles. Very well. But still the riwayat have come forward and have highlighted what? Have highlighted that Jannah is for somebody who does ziyarah. How can we explain this? Number one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has specifically chosen certain parts of His earth to be sacred, and has chosen certain human beings to be special. A simple example is today, if I take a £50 note and I say, look, there is nothing special about this, it's a piece of paper. You say to me, no, it's £50. I say to you, but it's a piece of paper, like any other piece of paper. Who made this £50 special more than any other normal piece of paper? Who made it? You and I. Human beings have given khususiyya, have given that extra focus on it. It has now become money, yes, that people respect and utilize. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given extra special attention and focus and sacredness to certain parts of His earth, as well as certain human beings. And He says, you know what? These I reward more for. I make special reward for those who go to these particular places. The Kaaba is made out of special gold or something that is from Jannah other than the Hajar? No, it's normal stones. But Allah has made it special because it's from Allah. Isn't it? Someone could build 10 Kaabas, but it will not gain any special sacredness. Isn't it? Yet the Kaaba itself is something chosen and specified by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's one. Number one. Two. Who says that these kind of discussions are intellectually derived? Please understand this. This is very key. Someone says, it doesn't make sense to me. Going ziyarah equal Jannah. How is this possible? One ziyarah Jannah? This doesn't make sense. Who told you it needs to make sense? What? Surely it should make sense. Say the Quran says, Laylatul Qadri khayrun min alfi shahr. Does that make sense? One night is greater than 83 years. Greater. That means what? Not equal. Much greater. So when the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I've chosen certain nights to be great. Yes. Laylatul Jum'ah to be great. Yes. Giving sadaqah on the day of Jum'ah much more than giving during the rest of the week. Why is it then when it comes to these particular actions, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through the words of the Ahl al-Bayt, and these riwayat are sahih by the way. Okay, somebody comes and says, oh, the weak cannot establish, the chain of narration is questionable. No. We have established riwayat that point to this reward being given to the Zuwar of Imam Al-Ridha alayhi salam, Zuwar of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Here, the question that we have to pose is, what makes human beings the barometer for what is right and what is wrong? What Allah wants to give. Allah wants to give Jannah for ziyarah. Who are you and I to do this? He said, I will give Laylatul Qadr khayrun min alfi shahr. But Maulana doesn't fit into my aql. Doesn't need to. Keep your aql for other things. Yes? That is what? That is important for us also to realize. Similarly, another misconception that exists is what? We have reliable ahadith that say what? That ziyarah of Imam Al-Ridha, please pay attention to this, final point we'll discuss, is greater then Hajj, that is mustahab. Let's listen to these particular riwayat that are found in Al-Kafi. For example, one is from Imam Muhammad salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. This particular individual, his name is Muhammad ibn Sulaiman. He went to see Abu Jaffer and said to him, I performed the Hajj and I completed the wajib Hajj. Then I came to Medina and I did the ziyarah of the grave of the Holy Prophet. By the way, we have narrations that says when you go to Hajj, go for the ziyarah first, then go Hajj, then come back and do ziyarah again. We have these narrations. That is start with the Prophet and end with the Prophet. Yes, that's how beautiful it is. Yes, most people go once, which is absolutely fine. Yes, either before or after. But these narrations also exist. He then said, ثُمَّ أَتَاكَ عَارِفًا بِحَقِّكِ. He then went to see the Imam. Where was Imam? That's in Medina. After he visited the Prophet, he went to see the Imam, this individual. يَعْلَمُ أَنَّكَ حُجَّةَ اللَّهِ عَلَى خَلْقِهِ. He knows that you are the proof of Allah on this earth. وَبَابُهُ الَّذِي يُؤْتَى مِنْهُ. The door in which people seek. Yes. ثُمَّ أَتَى قَبْرَ الْحُسَيْنِ عليه السلام. Then he went to Karbala. He performed the ziyarah of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. ثُمَّ أَتَى Baghdad. Then he went to Baghdad. And he, what? وَسَلَّمَ عَلَى أَبِي الْحَسَنِ. He went and did his ziyarah on the grave of whom? Who's Abu al-Hasan? Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam. Yes. ثُمَّ انصرف إلى بلاده. Then he went back to where he lived. فَإِذَا كَانَ فِي وَقْتِ الْحَجِّ. Next year at the time of Hajj, listen to this hadith. Yes. رَزَقَهُ اللَّهُ الْحَجِّ. Now he has money to go to Hajj again. He's done his Hawaj al-Hajj now. He now is ready to go to Hajj again. فَأَيُّهُمَا أَفْضَلُ. He asks the Imam, which is better? Shall I go to do the Hajj or go to Khurasan and visit the grave of your father? فَيُسَلِّمْ عَلَيْهِ. Listen to the answer of the ninth Imam. قَالَ لَا. No, doesn't go to Hajj. بَلْ يَأْتِي خُرَاسَانِ. No, he needs to go to Mashhad. وَيُسَلِّمْ عَلَى أَبِي الْحَسَنِ الرِّضَى أَفْضَلُ. It's better. Then he says, وَلْيَكُنْ ذَلِكَ فِي رَجَبٍ. And it is best if this happens in Rajab. That's why ulama, our fuqaha, muraja, we look at this hadith, which is Sahih Hasanat. They say the most highly recommended ziyarah of the 8th Imam is in Rajab. The most highly recommended ziyarah of Mashhad is in the month of Rajab. Imam alayhi salam then says to him, but don't do it now. لا ينبغي. Don't تفعلوا هذا now, because there is a ruler who would harm you. But this is what? For the future. For those who particularly ask. Just very quickly, in Al-Kafi, yes, somebody asked whom? Imam Al-Kadhim alayhi salam. He said to him, what is the value of the visitation of the grave of your son? Ajib, Imam Al-Ridha alayhi salam is still alive. Yes. Imam Al-Kadhim, his father says, من زار قبر ولدي علي كان له عند الله كسبعين حجة. Whomsoever visits the grave of my son Ali, Allah will give them the reward of 70 Hajj. So, you know, we have these people who, even when they're speaking to the Imams, they can't hold themselves. So this man looks at the Imam and said, what? 70 Hajj? How is that possible? Yes. Imam said, Na'am. Then the Imam says, وَسَبْعِينَ أَلْفَ حَجْ. No. 70,000 Hajj. I think the man didn't want to continue asking the Imam. Yes. The Imam would continue. Then the Imam then said to him, لَرَبُّ حَجَّةٍ غَيْرَ مَقْبُولَةٍ. Maybe when they go to Hajj, the Hajj is not accepted. Yes. Then he continues and says, مَنْ زَارَهُ وَبَاتَ عِنْدَهُ لَيْلَةٍ. Whomsoever visits the grave of my son and stays awake that night in ibadah, كَانَ كَمَنْ زَارَ اللَّهَ فِي عَرْشِهِ. It's as if they have visited Allah in His throne. Yes. That's a Sahih hadith in Al-Kafi. Sahih. Right? So, now, people say, whoa, Hajj recommended, or ziyarah of Imam Al-Ridha alayhi salam, the Ahl al-Bayt are saying, go for ziyarah of Imam Al-Ridha alayhi salam. How is this acceptable? If somebody asks you today online, yes, or offline. How do you respond to this? How do we come to understand this particular idea? Number one, this is mustahab hajj, not the wajib hajj. And we have to, of course, perform that shadow of a doubt that comes first. Number two, do we have narrations from the book of Ahlul Sunnah that say similar things? Yes. For example, we have narrations from the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his progeny. He says, "Man sabbaha lillahi mi'ah," whomsoever does tasbih of Allah 100 in the morning and at night, kana kaman hajja mi'atu hajja. It's like someone who performs 100 hajj. This is found, yes. We have in Kanz al-Ummal, volume 8, page 338. I'm deliberately quoting references, so it's not something that we obtained from Google, just like this, yes? Kanz al-Ummal, the second Khalifa Umar, he says, لو كنت مؤذنا لم أبالي أن لا أحج ولا أعتمر إلا حجة الإسلام. He says, if I was somebody who does adhan, I don't care if I do hajj or I do umrah, as long as I've done mine, wajib hajj. What is he saying? He's saying the reward is greater for doing adhan. Because I don't care if I do hajj, which is what recommended, or umrah, that is what recommended. Similarly, from the Holy Prophet of Islam, we are told the hadith that says, whomsoever does jihad one day for the sake of Allah, yes, كان له خيرا من عبادة 600,000 سنة. It's better than the worship of 600,000 years, was 600 حجة, and 600 hajjs, and 600,000 umrah, and what, 600,000 umrahs if you fight in the cause of Allah one day. So, what do we have here? We have abundant narrations that somehow come and say certain deeds are greater than recommended hajj. Do you agree? This is not only found in Shia literature, but found in what? Sunni hadiths too. How is it explained? Many of our maraji' have said wonderful things. One of them, one of the living maraji', may Allah preserve his life, Sayyid Muhammad Sadiq al-Ruhani, he comes forward and says, have you heard the hadith that says the pen of the scholars is greater than the blood of the martyrs? Midadul ulama afdalu min dima' ash-shuhada. He says it's because when it comes to certain deeds, their impacts are greater. Their potential is vast. And so when we come to analyze this, it seems that these deeds, have a greater opportunity to instill into the human being that element of what? Of proximity to God, of thawab, than other deeds. Similarly, we have what? We have also a hadith that emphasizes hajj that is recommended. Without a shadow of a doubt. Yes. So it's not that we are not recommending people to go for hajj, which is recommended. On the contrary, a hadith of the Ahlul Bayt says, "Alaykum bihajj hadha al-bayt." Make sure you perform the hajj of this house. وَأَدْمِنُوهُ. Go every year. Yes. فَإِنَّ فِي إِتْمَانِكُمْ الْحَجِّ دَفْعُ مَكَارِهِ الدُّنْيَا عَنْكُمْ. When we go every year for hajj, the calamities of this world will be what? Something that will be protected from. وَأَهْوَالِ يَوْمُ الْقِيَامَةِ. And the difficulties of the day of Qiyamah. What does this refer to, therefore? Sometimes people have a choice in life. I've been asked this question recently. Shall I go for Arba'een or shall I give my money to the people of Pakistan? You've been in these situations. There are people who are suffering and I want to go for Ziyarat. Which one should it be? Yes. I say to them, my dear sisters and brothers, you should, number one, never judge anyone who does anything. Because I have seen the answer from 5 or 6 maraji' when they were asked the same question. What is the answer? It depends on the human being and their need. There is no black and white in this regard. Oh, but there are people suffering, 100%. One of the maraji' said, try to do both. Another said, look at your situation. Maybe you need the Ziyarat. Maybe you are a requirement of the Ziyarat. This will be something you determine. Yes? We should never go out and judge. Why are these people going for Ziyarat and there are people suffering? Yes, no doubt. We should be looking at those who are suffering and helping them. But at the same time, there is so much emphasis for Ziyarat and there is so much need that some people have in order to establish the flame and strengthen their bond with the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. That's why this Ziyarat of Imam Ali Ibn Musa is so special. People have seen miracles. People have seen wonders. One final story and we conclude. This particular story is narrated by a number of our ulama. Yes. including the Allama al-Nuri and others who say that during the invasion of some of the enemies in that particular area, what do we find? They say there was a lady who had her daughter in an area known as Bukhara. And this particular lady lost her daughter, and the daughter was taken as a slave. She went to the shrine of Imam Al-Ridha alayhi salam, and she begged and said that I want my daughter back. I cannot have anything in life without my daughter. You are Dhamin, you are Imam Dhamin, you are the guarantor, yes. I want you to bring me back my daughter, yes. And so it is said that this daughter of hers was being sold in a market in another city. There was a man that night who saw in his dream he's drowning, and all of a sudden somebody pulls him out of this particular state. He looks at that person and he never seen that person before. He wonders who that person is. Later that day he's walking in the streets, there is a slave market. He looks at the slave market and he sees the same person who helped him when that particular dream the night before, yes, who saved him from drowning. Now he pays whatever it takes to purchase her. When he purchases her, yes, he marries her. And when he marries her, yes, she says to him that I used to live in Mashhad, in Khorasan. I'd like to go there. I'd like to perhaps see my mother. I'd like to. When he takes her there, it's at night, she falls ill. When she falls ill, she is in a particular place. He doesn't know where to go. There are no hospitals at that time. He goes to the shrine of Imam Al-Ridha. He goes there. He looks at the shrine and says, oh Imam, you are the guarantor. My wife is ill. I need to find someone to help her. Yes. And I don't know where to look. All of a sudden he sees a lady. He says to the lady, are you able to help me? She says, yes. What do you want? My wife, she's going through illness. She needs somebody, yes, to care for her, nurse her. That lady joins this man. He takes her to the house. The moment they enter the house, that lady goes to see and finds that that's her own daughter. Yes. And she finds that Imam Al-Ridha alayhi salam, through his blessings, has answered both of their dua, isn't it? That the mother was united with her daughter in the barakah of this great ziyarah of Imam alayhi salam. That is why the Imam alayhi salam in his last moments in this world would encourage people, would want to highlight to people where the grave is, so that people would come from far and wide, pay their respects to Ali Ibn Musa. Yes, he's referred to as Al-Gharib. Why? Because indeed he was alone, no doubt, when he was in that area in Khorasan. He did not have his family members with him. Yes, Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam was not with him at that time. You find that the Imam alayhi salam recognized his loneliness. But I tell you, there is one thing that consoled Imam al-Ridha when he remembered the loneliness of Aba Abdullah, isn't it? Because the Ahl al-Bayt, each and every one of them, you study the biography, you recognize that they would constantly remember Ashura, remember Karbala, are people who recall the masa'ib of Aba Abdullah al-Husayn, isn't it? Imam al-Ridha was amongst those who would recall the masa'ib of Aba Abdullah al-Husayn. He would call upon people to recite poetry, to recite eulogy, to remember and remind others of the tragedy of the 10th of Muharram. One of those who would recite is a man by the name of Di'bil al-Khaza'i. This man would recite for Imam al-Ridha alayhi salam, and no doubt these words of Di'bil would be in the minds of the Imam in his last few moments on this earth, when the poison was spreading throughout his body. He would remember the loneliness of Imam al-Husayn, because Di'bil would indeed address the poem towards whom? towards Sayyidatun Nisa Fatima. He would say, Fatima law khilti al-Husayn mujaddala. He says, oh Fatima, Fatima, if only you saw Hussein on the plains of Karbala. Oh Fatima, if only you saw how lonely Hussein was on the plains of Karbala. لَلَطَمْتِ الْخَدَّ فَاطِمَةً. Oh Fatima, that recognition of the Imam being all by himself in Karbala would have made you slap your cheeks. Do you know what the narration says? Imam al-Ridha, when Di'bin reached this point of the poetry, it says that Imam al-Ridha fell unconscious. He fell on the ground unconscious. You know why? He imagined his beloved mother Fatima slapping her cheeks. Allahu Akbar. Any member of the Ahlul Bayt having that image of Fatima slapping her cheeks breaks the heart. I ask you, why did Imam al-Ridha fall unconscious imagining his own mother in this state? He would remember the time Sayyidah herself would be slapped. He would remember the time Sayyidatun Nisa was under the attack of those who attacked the house of Rasulullah. It pained the Ahlul Bayt to remember the musibah of Sayyidatun Nisa Fatima, isn't it? That's why Imam al-Ridha alayhi salam, he would remember the tragedy of Karbala. The narration says when the poison spread throughout his body, he would look left and right. One narration said that he asked that he is taken outside. They said, Ya Rasulullah, why are you outside? You're sick. There is the poison that's affecting your body. He says, I want to feel the burning sun on my body because my grandfather Hussein's body was left on the plains of Karbala. Allahu Akbar. Such are the masayib of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, isn't it? Yet Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam would come. Imam al-Jawad would be, some narrations would point to Imam al-Jawad alayhi salam being with his father in his final few moments, consoling him, yes, being with him in his last few moments on this earth. But of course, who was next to Abu Abdullah in his final moments? This is something that broke the heart of Imam al-Hussein, but especially broke the heart of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, isn't it? That Abu al-Fadl would say to him, Ya Hussein, you are with me in these final moments. Who will look after you, Ya Abu Abdullah? Please, please, don't hold my head on your lap. Who will hold your head in their laps? Abu al-Fadl's heart was thinking Hussein, Ahlul Bayt's heart was thinking Hussein, isn't it? Yet Imam al-Ridha alayhi salam's soul leaves this world. He gets a funeral, yes, he gets a burial, he gets a shroud. Abu Abdullah, the moment he was beheaded, Umar ibn Sa'ad said, attack the body of Hussein. They came towards the body. A man severed the fingers of Abu Abdullah. A third person kicked the back of Abu Abdullah. Then the horses trampled on the body of Abu Abdullah. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين وإنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to raise us with Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Ya Allah, we are the lovers of Imam Ali Ibn Musa al-Ridha. Each and every one of us begs and desires to perform the ziyarah of his message shrine. Ya Allah, grant us the tawfiq to perform the ziyarah of the shrine of Imam al-Ridha in Mashhad, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Allow us to be of those who indeed attain Jannah as a result of this ziyarah. Ya Allah, allow this ziyarah to be accepted and make us of those who are resurrected with the holy 8th Imam on the day of Qiyamah. Matam Hussein, Ya Hussein.
Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein.
رو رو کے علی کیوں لیتے ہیں زینب کا نام مصلی پر رو رو کے علی کیوں لیتے ہیں زینب کا نام مصلی پر رو رو کے علی کیوں لیتے ہیں زینب کا نام کیا یاد علی کو آیا ہے بازار شام مصلی پر رو رو کے علی کیوں لیتے ہیں زینب کا نام مصلی پر رو رو کے علی کیوں لیتے ہیں زینب کا نام مصلی پر خون جاری تھا زخمی سر سے روتے تھے نمازی صف میں کھڑے خون جاری تھا زخمی سر سے روتے تھے نمازی صف میں کھڑے کس طرح سن نے رو رو کر کی فجر تمام مصلی پر رو رو کے علی کیوں لیتے ہیں زینب کا نام مصلی پر رو رو کے علی کیوں لیتے ہیں زینب کا نام مصلی پر کیا ماں کی طرح لینے تم کو مسجد میں چلی آئے زینب کیا ماں کی طرح لینے تم کو مسجد میں چلی آئے زینب پاپا کو جا کر ہے دو فضا پیغام میرا مصلی پر رو رو کے علی کیوں لیتے ہیں زینب کا نام مصلی پر رو رو کے علی کیوں لیتے ہیں زینب کا نام مصلی پر زخمی پہلو جب یاد آیا زخمی پیشانی بھول گیا زخمی پہلو جب یاد آیا زخمی پہچانی بھول گیا زہرا کی مصیبت پر رویا مظلوم امام مصلی پر رو رو کے علی کیوں لیتے ہیں زینب کا نام مصلی پر رو رو کے علی کیوں لیتے ہیں زینب کا نام مصلی پر یہ پہلی فجر ہے زینب کی سجدے میں سکون ملتا ہی نہیں یہ پہلی فجر ہے زینب کی سجدے میں سکون ملتا ہی نہیں دل ڈوبتا ہے آتا ہی نہیں ایک پل آرام مصلی پر رو رو کے علی کیوں لیتے ہیں कहता रहा शाम शाम मुसल्ले पर रो रो के अली क्यों लेते हैं ज़ैनब का नाम मुसल्ले पर रो रो के अली क्यों लेते हैं ज़ैनब का नाम मुसल्ले पर या हुसैन 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 या हुसैन
السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا أم المؤمنين خديجة الكبرى. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب. السلام عليك يا بضعة خاتم النبيين فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين وعلى سائر الشهداء كربنا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا شمس الضحى ويا بدر الدجى الثامن من أئمة النجبى علي بن موسى الرضا. سلام الله عليك وعلى آبائك السبعة وابنائك الأربعة وعلى أختك فاطمة المعصومة ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب العصر والزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا إمامنا وإمام الإنس والجان. عجل الله لك ما وعدك من النصر وظهور الأمر. السلام عليكم وعلى أهل بيت النبوة ورحمة الله وبركاته.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كل وليك وجدد الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آله في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا مناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها ترينا.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. We would like to take this opportunity to express our gratitude to Shaykh Al-Hilli for honouring us with another engaging and insightful majlis. Can I please ask that we express our appreciation through the recitation of three salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Center.